This is probably the most unique of these case studies in that it is a watercolor of the interior of an underground cavern somewhere in the world, and we did not know where. In addition, when I first looked at this watercolor, I had no idea what I was looking at. And my guess is that there wasn't anyone in over 200 years that looked at this watercolor and knew what they were looking at. This last case study is a watercolor by an amateur artist and geologist named William Day, titled Cavern, dated about 1789. The very first time I saw this image of this watercolor was I was in New York City having dinner with Dina Woodall and Johnny Yarker. He's the dealer from London who sold us this. And Dina pulled out her cell phone and showed me this picture and said, "Craig, you're a geologist. When we get back to Houston, I want you to find out where this cavern is." So I said, "Oh, okay," but I'm looking at it wondering, what am I looking at? Because the rocks appear to be oddly oriented, and there's an opening at the top with quite a bit of vegetation. But I came back to Houston, and I began by trying to figure out where William Day was in 1789. And where he was in the Peak District in central England, touring the countryside with fellow artist John Webber. William Day and John Webber sketched many landscapes in this district in 1789. Now, there's an interesting characteristic about the Peak District. It is underlain by limestone. And when limestone is flushed with groundwater, it can dissolve, and it can form what are called karst features, such as sinkholes, gorges, caverns, and caves. And if you look at this map, there are lots of caverns and caves all around the Peak District. The one I want you to look at, though, is in the lower left corner, and it's called Thor's Cave. Because Thor's Cave is the cavern that we see represented in that watercolor. And you'll see the evidence for this a little later. For this case study, I could not use Google Earth Studio to try to find the cavern because it can't see underground. So I had to rely on photographs taken by individuals and that were posted online to see if I can see any interior of a cavern or cave within the Peak District that looked anything like what I see in that watercolor. And I saw nothing. So I'm sitting at my desk, I'm looking at this picture, and I'm wondering what I'm going to do. And then I recalled one photograph that has a characteristic similar to what I see on this watercolor. So I went back to look for it. And the photograph was of Thor's Cave. This is it. And what reminded me of what I see in the watercolor is that V-shaped opening on the left side of the cave looked like that V-shaped white area at the lower part of this watercolor. So I was sitting at my desk, and then a light bulb went on, and I laughed, and I did this. And I said to myself, now this looks more like a cave. In fact, there are similarities to what I see in the photograph on the left, and I'll show you that in a second. So this watercolor was possibly hung in a wrong orientation for over 200 years. So let's have a look inside of Thor's Cave so that we can compare what we see in the watercolor with what we see in that photograph. I'm going to outline various features with rectangles. The first feature is the largest opening, and you can see vegetation growing on the left side of the opening in both images. The second feature is this rock that's hanging down from the ceiling, and you can see the similarity in both images. And that rock sits directly in front of the second opening, which is what pointed me to Thor's Cave initially. And then there are these boulders on the floor of the cavern. And especially look at the one that is outlined in blue. There is concave erosion in both. They are limestone. Now you might have noticed that rock in the lower left that has what appear to be flowers growing on it. It's a vertical rock, but it was once a horizontal rock. Those flowers were drawn by another hand at a later time. They don't belong there. So around 1789, William Day, an amateur artist and geologist, was inside of Thor's Cave sketching what he saw to create this watercolor titled Cavern.